Oh my God, we're back.
Oh boy.
Unfltrd Bonds.
Here we are.
It is your host, Jordan, and I'm sitting across from my beautiful wife, Ashton. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good.
Okay, so today
Yeah.
we are breaking down what it means to break free from the cycles of toxic patterns.
Okay.
Embrace true freedom with God's grace. We're going to get personal. We're going to get raw. We're going to get unfiltered.
I love that.
Yeah.
Unfltrd Bonds.
With our friend,
Who's our friend?
Mr. Dajuan Stewart.
How's it going? What's up? What's up? What's up?
I'm excited about this. Me and my wife, we literally just met you, in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah.
But before we get into all the specifics, can you get a 15-second commercial about you and go?
Dajuan Stewart. 15 seconds.
Yeah, you're losing seconds.
I know. I'm Dajuan Stewart. I am CEO of Another Level Mentality.
Okay, CEO.
And that's pretty much all I do. Motivation, fitness, and wellness. I started with spirit, mind, and body.
Okay,
So
yeah.
it's just time, what I am.
We're going to get to know Dajuan with another quick icebreaker.
Yes.
So if your most toxic season had a theme song, what would that song be?
Ooh, that's kind of on the spot there.
Yeah. Toxic theme song. I think that's a very interesting question.
Do you want some time to think while I tell you mine?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have a little time to think on that.
So in my toxic 20s, my favorite theme, or not my favorite theme, my song to describe my toxic season would be Ray Shremmerd.
Jesus, she's about to say it.
I think it's called Dance Like a Stripper. Somebody come get us. She dancing like a stripper. I just love the song. I felt like a little, stripper.
Yeah.
Even though I was on no one's pole. Okay. But yeah.
I'm screwed.
So that could be.
Please. Yes, you had plenty of time, I think.
What would be your song?
When I think about it, 50 Cent. If I can't do it, it can't be done. My toxicity was more of a manliness and, and I got it figured out. I got it. Can't tell me nothing. I'll take care of it. I can get it done. It was me, right? It was all me. So,
Bless you.
That's,
I don't think I heard this 50 Cent song.
I haven't either.
I thought you were about to say In the Club.
no.
Yeah.
I was never a
I'm gonna have to
club
play that
person.
one This would be anything Trey Songz. There was this one in particular that I thought was extremely toxic. It was a song called Can't Be Friends.
Okay.
I had a situation where I had to not be friends with someone anymore. So it was very toxic.
Yep.
I was not prepared.
All right.
We're going to move forward.
I thought you were going to say neighbors on my name.
Okay, so here we are. As you all know, if you've been listening to our podcast, we like to ground ourselves in the fact. We need some type of statistic. What is the culture saying? And because we are talking about toxic tendencies, we recognize that can be a situation where everyone has a point of view. You can get toxic with food. You can get toxic with your sex life. You can get toxic with friendships. So for a sake of the topic, we're leaning into this idea of a womanizer. According to this article, it says here, a womanizer is a term for a man who can get affection from plenty of women, but does not have the intention of committing to any one of them. They are charismatic and experts at flirting. They will say and do things they don't mean just to get a woman's attention and maybe even her heart. You may be asking why, and it says some men particularly struggle to feel worthy and valid on their own. They may use dating as a way to outsource self-worth and seek validation. Jesus.
That's a lot you just said. You got my hands sweating.
But I think you're the great guy to talk about it, because I know when we had lunch, you were kind of giving me a high-level detail of like your past. And
I'll say this too. A lot of our target audience would include men who are still in their season of womanizing. So how can your experience and your story minister so that men can be set free from engaging in those type of behaviors?
Well, I think that first, when we talk about womanizing, and there's so many different levels of it. So I think first it would be getting down to the nucleus of it. And to me, that emotional part is the nucleus of all those womanizing traits come off of that. So anyone that's dealing with it is tapping into your emotional being, that inner man, and understanding where you've gone, what spin off of, and where you struggle as far as toxicity and, womanizing traits. You have manipulator, you have the abuser, you have the dog out there that's just tearing these women up, just bam, bam, one after another, and don't care. You have someone just in control where a woman doesn't have a voice. And all of those, I feel like, derive from emotional deficiencies that, for a man, the woman is the victim. And I've gone through that. I've gone through it where I haven't been in relationships, and I've gone through it in relationships. And it's a hard thing. It's one of the things where in my trials, I carried a lot of guilt because of it. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the things that led me down a road where I struggled spiritually, emotionally, and mentally because of some of the things that I've done in my past relationships. So it is very key for that emotional part. So when you ask me, where would I go with that? It's that emotional security. Like I said, emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, and that's going to give you emotional security. So you can't get it. You're not going to get it without God. You're just not. And that's something I had to learn.
I love that you said that, because it gets to almost like a core root as it relates to the toxic nature of someone who may be unaware. Like, where did this come from? And,
right.
And when you think about emotional health, it requires you to really understand, what is my emotional IQ? And what is that? Mm-hmm. And so if you don't mind, at what point did you recognize that your emotional health needed attention?
In my relationships, my arguing and my fights turned into something crazy. And it didn't turn into any fist fights or nothing like that. But I'll go back to that. I started realizing I would punch holes in walls. I would just get mad. I'm never going to hit a woman, but I got to get this anger out. Mm-hmm. So I would punch a hole in the wall, and I would remember looking at it one day, say, man, I did that. There was a time where I got so mad and I argued that I flipped my grill over, my barbecue grill, and I'm looking at it.
What's the matter with you?
I'm like, two things. One,
not the barbecue grill.
Yeah, one, I'm like, damn, that's my grill.
Yeah, right, yours.
I'm like, that's my grill. Hold up. And that joint was like, it all bent up. But seriously, I was like, dang. But when I noticed the fear that I would inflict, got stopped. Mm-hmm. You emotionally have no control. And I've realized it more and more. And I'm like, you are causing pain. You're causing hurt. And it was something that I had to understand that I was getting out.
I'm glad you touched on that, because I feel like that is like the start of it, Mm-hmm. Ocean, what are you thinking?
I was thinking about self-control.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you were to trace back that first time, even as a child, where you just completely lost control, like, what was the trigger of that? Because it doesn't just happen you don't just start punching holes overnight.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't just like, punch holes. For me, even growing up, I emotionally buried everything. Mm. And because of that, I feel like I had no emotional barriers or no emotional controls. Like, my emotions are always behind this thin layer of plastic ready to bust out. Mm-hmm. But as a man, especially as a black man, you got to be strong. So it's always this strong outer, shell. And it wasn't until I broke emotionally, which caused me to break mentally, where I had to realize you can't let that build up. And letting it build up caused so much more than just anger. It caused feeling unworthy or feeling inadequate, right? Or feeling insecure in ways. And now it's a spinoff, because you're seeking approval. You're seeking attention, or you're seeking affirmation, and if your emotions are not good, and my emotions weren't good in the inner man, It doesn't matter how good your woman is to you. It doesn't matter how good your job is. If you're not okay inside emotionally, then you're going to always be searching for that, and you're not going to have any control. It's a real hard thing to navigate and to carry for years of your life. And especially, I was telling you the other day that it's one thing to be oblivious of it, but it's another thing to be aware. And one of the hardest things in the world is to see something, to know what's going on, but you still have no control. Still have no control of it, and I was there for a while, for a chunk of my life. I started to see, Dajuan, wait a minute, you were not emotionally okay, but you've already put this image of yourself out here. You have to remain this way.
Wow.
So I had to be strong. I had to do this. I had been inside. Outside, I'm strong. I'm walking, working out different ways, helping people, raising my sons, doing this, working hard. Boom, but inside I'm soft. Inside I'm weak. My inner man is just as weak as a baby bird. I'm 45 years old, right? And I'm like, man, I got this figured out. But it wasn't until I broke emotionally to where I was like, okay, no, you didn't have gossip. You didn't have nothing figured out. And until you put me at the center of your heart, and center of your heart, which means I'm going to mold your emotions. I'm going to keep you in my hands. And then that's going to affect your mental. That's going to be your physical. That's how you're going to be strong from the inside out. And that's where God delivered me.
That's a lot of unpack.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. I think it's important because you touched on a lot of things. Can you layer in this idea of how that influences this culture of toxic masculinity?
Yeah, as a Black man, we're born into a war. It's like being born on a battlefield. As Black men, our ability to be leaders and good husbands and good stewards and all of that is we already come in with a handicap. So because of that, I believe that a lot of our Black men, we coming in the game without being able to see the need for it. And because we don't see the need for it, it's neglected. It's overlooked. It's put on the back burner. One situation turns to another. One day turns into a week turns into a month. That's when it's 5 years, it's 10 years, and you haven't dealt with it. That is plaguing us. It's plaguing us in our homes, in our churches, in our communities. As Black men, it's plaguing us on the end. We're tearing ourselves down because inside we're not worthy. Inside we are insecure emotionally or insecure. We don't feel worth this or that or whatever. Well, then all of a sudden, as we're tearing ourselves up, we're tearing our women. And that's where the womanizing part comes in.
I guess in that same vein, when you think about toxic masculinity, what's your thoughts on toxic femininity?
I knew you were about to go there.
Because that is a thing.
Oh, it's a thing.
It's a thing. It may not be celebrated as much as...
Here's this. A lot of men ain't going to like when I say this.
Uh-oh.
I think toxic femininity comes from a lack of strong men or weak men. And this is, I'm admitting, I'm a strong guy. I can lift a lot of weights, but inside I was a weak man. We destroy our women, and that is a trait, a product of womanizing. We put our women in a situation where they become that. And it's like, now, wait a minute. Now this Black family is destroyed, or this family over here is destroyed, and I'm not to make it about a race thing, whatever, but it plagues us, right? Let's just be real about it. Unfiltered, it plagues us. It plagues our homes, our communities, our everything. And so I think for toxic femininity, I have to say that it is a byproduct of toxic masculinity. It's not probably a popular take on it.
I mean, we have a woman sitting at the table. I'm curious, what's your take? Do you believe that men are at fault for the toxic femininity that's plaguing the culture?
I think it contributes to it for sure. I think when you consider a toxic female, in the same way you consider toxic masculinity, it's like, I'm going to be independent. I don't need a man for anything.
Yeah.
And I would say I even had that narrative having grown up with a single mom.
Yeah.
Like she really encouraged me not to wait on a man to do anything. You can do it by yourself. You're an alpha woman. You go and get it.
But the tone is where it's like, because so many men weren't there for this, not there for that, didn't do this, didn't do that. At some point, that became the tone of our women. Like, you know what? I can't rely on this man to do this. Can't rely on this man. Can't, you're going to cheat or you're going to do this, you're going to do that. I can do it by myself. I can do it all by myself. Is that Tony Braxton?
I don't know. Is that Tony?
Who was that?
I don't know.
I can do that. No, that was Tyler Perry.
No, and that's a movie. It's a song, though. It's a song.
I'm sure.
But, I do think a level of accountability should be there for women, having to say some grace and some mercy. You say, let me give this man an opportunity, or let me give men an opportunity to show that they can be strong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The reason I emphasize that is because going back to my wife, when we first got married, I mean, my God, was she toxic. I'm not dramatic. But she definitely had this IDEP, I think that was Prophet Boosie. That was her anthem. And she stood on that. And it was very challenging for me because I was trying to process, how am I going to stay married to this woman? Because she won't let me be a man. Let me be a man, Gina. Like, it just was not happening. And so we was in therapy about that because I was just like, you need to move out the way. So I'm glad that you leaned into this idea of accountability, because there's a lot of men who are in the situation that we were in, my wife specifically, and their wives haven't let or their spouses or whatever partner, they haven't allowed them the opportunity to be that man. So I'm curious in terms of that. I'll open up the floor, but I am interested to hear your take on what do you say about the man who is creating a space for his woman to not be, I guess, in a toxic relationship by holding her accountable, but she's not allowing that to happen. What's your take on that?
I think the man has to be an example. And I think the more that man is an example, I think at some point, the woman of God will begin to that man is going to dictate it. So if you dictate that energy in your home or on a job, or wherever it is, then it's going to wear off. And it'll take some patience. But as a man, this is why I say a lot of it is on us. Because we, as men of God, or just as a man in general, we are naturally leaders. So we got to set the tone, and it will take some patience. It will take some tough conversations. It'll take some love. And I think if that love is there, then that love will bring the patience. It will bring dialogue, So I mean, it would be a frustrating thing, though.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in addition to men setting the tone, as well as providing opportunity to show that they can be dependable, accountable, all the things. Because I mean, Jordan really was just like, you're not allowing me to be a husband. So like, give me an opportunity. And I had to let my guard down to be disappointed. Because it really wasn't even like the independent Black woman. It was the 5-year-old little girl who had been let down by her father time and time and time and time again, that wasn't healed to be able to feel confident that he wouldn't let me down and that I wouldn't then project my fatherhood wounds on him. It's like, I don't even want to disappoint myself by letting my guard down in that way. So I'm fine doing it by myself. And he was like my counterpart.
Yeah.
But that's not how a marriage works.
Right.
So that I literally in therapy. So for the woman who's struggling with toxic femininity and the way we're discussing, really understanding what is driving that toxicity. For me, it was a childhood wound. Like I wasn't allowing myself to not be independent because I didn't want to be disappointed. And that was all because I created this narrative that men are not dependable.
Wow.
Yeah.
So as much as I thought my husband was perfect in all the things, I loved him. I knew the Lord had called us together, but my heart wasn't prepared to depend on him as a husband.
That's good.
Yeah, that's deep.
I remember those days, and it was very vivid because I was like, oh, you want to go deep. And then it forced me to even just turn to myself and was like, okay, well, what is my toxic nature? And for me, I've always saw this strong Black woman. And so I would project that onto my wife. I would be like, hey, you're not this strong Black woman that I need you to be right now.
Oh, you said that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We are Unfltrd Bonds.
Man.
And it was so interesting because I didn't come to her directly with it.
Yeah.
I processed it internally. And as I processed it, I said, okay, why am I holding her to this standard?
Yeah.
And I began to realize that every woman that impacted or influenced me, that's what they carried. But what I found with my wife is that she is a healthy, strong Black woman. And I hadn't seen that before. And so because of the unhealthiness that most strong Black women bleed from, going back to you saying like the man needs to be there, falls back on us. There's just some truth there because of the lack of contribution, because of the lack of contributions that wasn't made from a man, and just women feeling like they gotta do this, they gotta do that. And my experience was like, hey, you gonna work till you die, and if ain't no blood, you ain't going to the hospital, you know. And so my wife, she'll be talking about things, and I'm like, girl, you ain't bleeding, what you talking about? Go in there, relax, put them kids on that, put some ice on that. But you know, she takes a healthy approach, and so I had to learn how to process my toxic ways and just listen and actually be present and recognize that I'm not who I once was.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. So, okay. So I know before we wrap this up, I'm curious. I really want to understand when you were on this toxic freedom path, was there at any point where you felt like, man, I just want to be toxic and just the hell with this toxic stuff? Like, I want to be toxic. Has there been a moment where you just had temptation take you over?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I owned it. Like, you know what? Yeah, you know what? That's how you want to be. I'm going to be like that too, you know. I know how I can dig into my toxic bag and, you know, let's go, you know. So it... You know,
He said toxic bag.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a trend right there. Put it on your shirt.
The weekender. The toxic weekender bag.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But no,
that was a strong picture. I think that was SZA. She only wanted to be with the guy on the weekends.
Yeah.
Shout out to
Shout out to her.
I'm really praying for her.
Yeah. But no, there was a lot of times where I would just say, okay, here we go. You know, let's do it. Game on. Let's play the game. You know, this is what you're going to do. I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to do it, and you're going to do it, and then it's going to be a cycle. The problem with that, it turns into a vicious cycle. So you got this man who, whatever his toxic traits are, you know, whatever his womanizing traits are, whether it's cheating or whether it's manipulating or abusing, he knows what he's good at. He knows what he can get over and what he can do. So when that comes over and projected onto a woman, and then her toxic femininity comes in, now you got this cycle that's just going boom, 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 boom. And the cycle just becomes a huge cancer. It gets worse and worse. And I'll go back to it. It's going to take that man to say, you know what? I'm surrendering. I'm going to surrender this to God. I'm going to give her to God. I'm going to give to me to God. And when I decide to do that, then that's when you start to see some changes.
That's good. And kind of reminds me of Romans 12, where it talks about being renewed in the mind and making a conscious decision, so to speak, to just die to it and just say, you know what? I'm releasing this, and I want the Lord to do something on the inside of me and her.
Yeah.
So I love that you said that.
Because he's not going to do nothing with her until he does something with you as me.
Yeah.
You're the head.
I know one of Ashley's favorite things is that she's always drawn these conclusions to unforgiveness. So I'm convinced she has a question about unforgiveness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unforgiveness.
As you gave your heart to the Lord completely to surrender your toxic nature, what did forgiveness look like for yourself, for those you were in relationships with, even, dare I say, for the Lord?
Unforgiveness is we can talk for another 2 hours on that. For me, it's one of the things that made me hit a brick wall because I didn't forgive myself. And I carried a lot of guilt, and not spoke about getting to a point where I had to go to another level, carrying guilt and regret because I didn't forgive myself and I didn't give things to God. That's what weighed me down. So unforgiveness is huge.
What does that look like practically for the person who's struggling to forgive themselves? Like, what were the steps you took to be free from shame and guilt that you were?
I didn't take any steps personally. God had to break me. Guilt came to me in the form of demons. Personally, that's my story. The guilt fed my unforgiveness to myself. I saw how I was as a man, to myself, first and foremost, to the situations in my life, to my gal, whoever. It was, whoa, I can see it in the guilt. So when I carry guilt for this, that, whatever, for years, it continuously fed the demons of unforgiveness, and that was horrible. So to answer your question, the guilt, I think, in oneself is what, and regret is what keeps unforgiveness for oneself alive. And like I said, I don't think you're going to forgive your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your coworker or your mama or your daddy. Nobody, if you won't have no self-forgiveness. I just don't think it's going to, from my experiences.
I love that. I'm glad that you lean on to that because it is a spiritual warfare. You know, Scripture talks about like we don't really fight these things in the physical. It's all spiritual. So for the fact that the Holy Spirit broke you down and was like, hey, let me tell you something. You're toxic. But what I really like though about this discussion, I'm gonna be honest, we led with womanizer. And as we unpack this, you get to all these roots, all these different stems, if you will, that drove the womanizer behavior.
Yep.
Right.
So I'm encouraged that I feel like now we can have people who are at least sensitive to this or aware. Women and men can watch out for red flags because there's some womanizers out there. Is that a thing?
Manizers.
It is.
I
looked it up.
Okay, it is. You know,
I believe it. I mean, it all stems from toxic nature. So,
or emotional unhealthiness. That's the common theme here, right?
Absolutely.
So they should probably go get that book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality.
Shout out to Pete Scazzaro.
Yeah, we need a sponsor ad, so make sure you send us some money in the account.
No, but really, that book, when you talk about getting to the root of it all, like you going back to when I most of my toxicity came from me suppressing my feeling. Like that led you on this journey and path to figure out how to really deal with your toxic nature in a way that was yielding an outcome that was productive.
Right.
Not just dealing with you being a womanizer, but what's the root of all of that? You're not addressing your emotional health.
Right.
Jesus, somebody's been set free.
Amen.
And we just want to thank you for coming on and talking about something that a lot of us probably would have never thought about. Because when you told me we was going to talk about womanizer, I said, okay.
Yeah.
But it led us to this journey of emotional health and how important it is.
Yeah.
So shout out to you for doing the work because I know it's not easy. Just putting yourself in a vulnerable situation daily, all in hopes that, you know, you'll no longer be a womanizer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Wow.
All right, so this is Unfiltered Bonds.
I'm not a womanizer.
Yeah. We clarify
We clear, man.
you're set free.
No.
Oh, Jesus.
Except for
But this is Unfiltered Bonds. We want to thank you for listening. So I think we want to close out, but before we do, if someone wanted to find out more about you or they wanted to get in contact, what is the best way for them to do that?
So another level is my business. That's the umbrella of what I do. I do motivation and fitness and wellness for that. And if you be up once, I'll have it out here shortly. But if you put that in Facebook or Instagram, you'll be able to find that.
All right, bet.
Another level, ANOTHALEV3L.
I love it. Spell it for the sake.
Another level 3.
Yes.
Another level.
He-
The 3 is the second E. The second E is a 3, not 8.
Another
Another-
brand design here.
Yeah, another level mentality. That's what I live by, and that's what that's what I carry for a while. So that means a lot to me. But that's how you be able to find me.
So make sure you check out our boys.
Check it out.
Stewart
Right on.
on the Unfiltered Bonds.
Podcast.
We love y'all.
Appreciate you.